Today, Steve and Alix will work on the last of the bronze floors. These fill in the gaps left from when the molds came out and the last of the steam bent frames went in. With those in place, work gets started on Arabella's mast step. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you feel like it, and thanks for supporting the project in all the ways that you do.
Well, we got a bunch more snow last night. By a bunch, we got probably like another foot of snow, which was mildly unexpected, but it's kind of nice. We live in New England because we like the difference in seasons, and having the snow every once in a while is pretty cool. The downside to all that is that it also means that we have a lot more chores around here. You know, you got to remove the snow and make sure everything around the yard and everything like that is okay. So it does take away a little bit more time from the build, but it's a give and take. It's all good. So today, Steve is going to be working on shoveling a little bit more around the house, and I am going to hop right into the bilge, which is now clean, and start bending some wings for the last couple floors that we need to make. So we have 6 more floors that we need to make from the frames that we put in, well, that Steve put in this summer when the molds came out. So I'm going to have to get this beast down into the bilge, and this is the A-frame press that we were using to bend the wings for the floors. So once I can get a couple of those done, Steve's going to come in behind me and start cutting out the base plates and all the other parts to it. And once those are all cut and bent and ready to go, we're going to get the welder back in here like we did before and just quickly tack them. The worst part about all this, the part that we hate the most because it's the most dangerous, so it's getting the welder back out here. But necessary evil, and once that is done, he'll finish welding them in the garage where it's a little bit warmer and a little bit more covered, and we can hopefully get this one project completely done. I don't think there has been much on this project yet that we've been able to completely finish because of just the way that things work out. So that'll be really cool to finally do and to see those all laid out in there. And then Steve's going to get to start working on the mast steps, which is going to be really exciting as well. So I'm going to wrestle this beast down in there and get to work. Now the key here is to make sure we don't drop this into the boat. Perfect.
Yeah, that does help. Weirdly enough.
Okay, does anybody have any ideas why I drilled that hole bigger than that hole? Any guesses? We're gonna find out soon. So, that's gonna end up being like that. Except we want it to be flush with the wings.
Yep.
And then we wanna,
From there.
right now I'm not super worried about like the base plates being totally lined up fore and aft. All we gotta do is make sure that that vertical plate will drop in there really nicely and meet the bottom ones and the sides. And then we've got to mark where the limber's gonna go, and we got to mark where we need to chamfer so that I can get in there and weld. Picking up what I'm putting down.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the setting. So last time we had used this, we had saved settings. So memory 1 should be the tack welding, and memory 2 should be the actual welding. So memory 1, 25, 300, that seems about right. Okay, so the welder's all set up. We're gonna go upstairs and get ready to do the welding, but I'll turn this off for now. Just want to make sure that everything's good to go and we're on the right settings so that when I'm ready to weld, I can just have Casey flip the switch. A couple spring clamps. Okay.
Yeah,
We
feeling
can do
good?
that without, you know, scorching the living hell out of the keel timber. Seems good. Feel like any of the sparks are going to be contained to where it's wet.
Right.
We'll give all of this a good dousing when we're done. We'll probably take that bucket and just soak the bays around here.
Sure.
I'm less worried about getting the boat wet than I'm worried about burning the boat down.
Fire is the biggest issue on boats.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, I think we are just about ready to do some welding. Certainly got heavier. All right. Now it's fairly strong, but dropping it would probably break the welds. Got it. Oh, watch the varnish.
Got it. Got it.
Watch the varnish.
All right.
So I know that many of you are wondering why I'm wearing the PAPPR helmet, the forced air one, while I'm doing this, but I didn't wear it when I was welding up all of the tie rods. And the reasons are, we only have one battery for it, and Satchel and I got all geared up to weld the tie rods, and the battery was totally dead. And instead of delaying all of that a day, I just welded it. It's not the greatest thing, it's not good for you, but batteries are charged, so we're gonna do the rest of the welding and the grinding. We'll put it to good use. This thing with exposures, they're not good, but it's the long-term reoccurring ones that are really, really bad. So hopefully that one time won't kill me. Alright, the mission today is to get those 3 bronze floors that Casey and I worked on yesterday welded up and ground so that I can put them in the boat. There's only one of them that I really need to get welded and ground, and then I can start working on the mast step. but we'll do all 3 of them. Alix is in the boat right now. He's working on the last 3 of the bronze floors. So by the time I'm done with these 3 in the mast step, he will be more than done with having the wings and the base plates all ready, and then I can weld those up. So we're motoring through them. It helps having done it before. There's not much on the build that we've done before, so everything is new. And in this instance, we've done this before, so it's a heck of a lot easier. The system's already dialed in. I don't know if you can see my breath, but it's chilly today. So we got the wood stove cranked in the house, and I brought the 3 bronze floors in first thing this morning and put them by the wood stove. And one at a time, they're sitting on top of a fire brick on top of the wood stove. So they're not making contact with the wood stove, and they're not getting like super screaming hot, but they're getting hot enough that I need to put the welding gloves on to go pick them up and bring them out here. And that way the bronze is nice and warm and we can get to welding, and then as soon as I'm done here, I'm bringing them right back into the house, putting them by the wood stove. We'll let them cool down a little bit. Because we're going from such temperature extremes, from below freezing all the way up to molten metal, and then in this environment pretty quickly back to freezing, we don't want to stress those welds any more than we have to. So by pre-warming them in the house, bringing them right out here, welding them up and bringing them back in, hopefully we will not stress them so badly. I'm just going to run around and add a few more tacks, and that way it doesn't warp, or doesn't warp as much when we weld it. And then I'll turn the heat up and fire through them and really, really weld them. Okay, so I go in there like that. And if you remember, I cut this forward hole a little bit bigger, and that was so that we could fit over this bolt. It comes up at a bit of an angle, and I did not want to try to get that angle drilled perfectly in alignment with everything else. We just did it just a little bit oversized so we can slip on there. Oh, hear that? It just thunks down in there. Boom. Perfect. That is exactly what we're looking for. These gaps in here will eventually get filled up with a compound so they don't become just a water well. And then any water should hit the edge of the floors and head down the center line to the bilge pumps. You notice that all of the other floors, they just have the 2 bolts, and this one's gonna have 4. And the reason for that is this is gonna be one of the main anchoring points for the mast step. Atkin has the mast just right here on the keel. And if you think about the boat on the hard, that kind of makes sense, right? That's your kind of your center line. We're used to thinking about foundations. But in the water, the hull is what's lifting up, and the center line is trying to go down. So if you look here, if we were to put it on the center line, which is the timber here, you have the ballast keel, which is trying to go down to Davy Jones' locker, and you have the buoyancy of the hull that is pushing up. So a lot of that load, you know, ends up right here where those frames are attached to the center line and where we have our floors coming in that attach the frames to the center line. So if we take the mast and say we're to put it through here, and it were to push down on just the center line here, it would be pulling down on the fasteners that hold the bronze floors to the center line, so those hanger bolts that we made. Now, if we take the mast and we put, say, a really big timber here, and we put our mast on top of that timber, and this is called a mast step, now we're pushing down, you know, on 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 floors. And what that does is it transfers that load from the bolts that are holding the bronze floors to the center line, and it transfers that to all of these individual bolts that are going up the frames and that are attached to all of the planking, which in our case are oak. So by having it on top of the floors, we're pulling on all of the frames and we're spreading that load out dramatically around the boat. And that should go a long way towards keeping any of the garboards or the lower planks from opening up over time from that ballast keel and the mast trying to drive to the bottom and the hull trying to float to the top. So we got a big old timber of live oak upstairs, and we're gonna make that sit over these bronze floors, and we'll end up welding some tabs here to bolt it in, and then our masts will ride on top of that. Here is the main timber that I think is going to become the mast step. So this is a big chunk of live oak, and we got this from Andrew, who's restoring Rosalind down in Mystic Seaport. If you haven't checked him out, you should. He's restoring this 40-something foot gigantic wooden boat. He's doing an awesome job. He's doing it all by himself. He's got a couple videos out there and Instagram and stuff. Check it out. Akiva, why are you so whiny today? You want to go in, you want to go out, you want to go in, you want to go out. You're never satisfied. I gotta work. I got stuff I gotta do. I'm sorry. Go, entertain yourself. Go chase mice or something. It's plenty deep for the mast step. It's not quite wide enough. So I've got a couple big locust boards here, and what I'm going to do is get this kind of roughed out, and then we can sandwich the locust boards on either side, put a couple bolts through it, and that'll bring the width up to be wider than the mast. And this live oak, I know it looks pretty rough. I mean, there's some really big checks in it, but this stuff is crazy, and the grain is all just swirly and interlocked, and I can't even fathom a guess at how much energy and force it would take to get this thing to bend and deflect. And since it's elevated on the bronze floors inside the hull, it's not somewhere that is ever really going to get and stay wet. So I'm not worried about it being watertight, obviously, that's not a factor. And in terms of moisture getting into these checks and doing anything, live oak is just insanely rot resistant, and it's not somewhere that should be getting saturated on any regular basis anyways. If the water's that high in the bilge, we've got problems. If you look carefully, you might notice that there's kind of like a weird ragged hole here. When I planed this one, I found a fencing staple. I found the two prongs sticking up, so I thought it was a pair of nails, and I dug out on either side of them, and there was actually the business end of a fencing staple. So I'm guessing this locust came from Paul's, because his was right along an old fence line. So I wrestled that out, and this is going to end up mated against the live oak, so I'm not going to bother plugging it or anything. I'm just going to fully saturate it with this copper-based anti-fouling paint here and call it a day. This isn't a spot that really should ever get wet. It's not in contact with the builds or anything, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And if any water for some weird reason does get in there, it'll be sitting in a whole bunch of copper-based paint, which should help slow down, if not stop, any sort of fungal growth or anything that might want to begin. Cool. Alright, go grab some lunch, make up some bolts, probably throw another coat on this and see if we can get this bolted together and planed down. And I don't think we'll get it into the boat today, but we should get it into the boat tomorrow. By the way, this is cutting oil, thread cutting lubricant. We're not putting shaving cream on there. This is the first time using these 5/8 dies. We had a pipe threader on loan for a while, but got called back to its home. So thankfully I don't have a ton to do like this, because it would be tedious. But for the handful we got to do, it works. Thankfully, from doing the backbone assembly, we had a couple bolts that we had mismeasured, or not exactly sure what we did with them, but there were a couple bolts and threaded chunks of 5/8 rod in the scrap bin from the bronze work. So I only had to death-thread like half of these bolts. The other half were threaded with the machine earlier, so that was nice. Definitely don't have to go to the gym. Center is live oak, and let's, for ease of sake here, just call it 6 inches wide. It's a little narrower than that here and a little more than that. Down at the ends, it's 5.5 inches thick, and in the middle, it is 8 inches thick. And so let's see, 13 inches flat across the top. And then the cheeks are, call it 2 1/4 locus. So what would it take to bend this? So if we put a support at one end, a support at the other, how much weight would we have to drop in the middle of this to get it to deflect? And then we got to remember it's actually supported on 2 and 4 floors. So I feel pretty good about this thing not deforming, not deflecting, and we can cut into it a couple inches in the bottom so that we can set it around those floors and make contact with them all really well, and have no way on earth for it to slide fore or aft without moving those bronze floors. So I think this is good. I've kind of trashed the shop, so I'm gonna do some cleanup, and then I've got to climb in the boat and do a little bit of thinking about how best to pick up the patterns.
Next week, the chunky mast step gets shaved down and fit onto the floors inside Arabella. And with the bronze floors all done, Steve does a quick check to see if Arabella's measurements are still right on center. Find out how that went next time. And thanks for watching.